Welcome, everybody, to the Ambition Project Show. I'm your host, Deirdre Sanborn. On this show, I interview ambitious leaders who share their story of how they've made a big, positive impact on people's lives, in their organizations, and in their communities, so that you, the listener, may be inspired to do the same. If you like what you hear on the show, subscribe to it on iTunes or on my website at www.theambitionprojectshow.com. Today, I'm with Dr. Nathaniel Hearne, who is the author of a book titled Friday Night Lights: Untold Stories from Behind the Lights. He is one of the football coaches at Permian High School and a key influence in the lives of players on that team. Coach Hearne has a unique perspective on the happenings at Permian High School during the time that the book was written. His experiences also have given him wisdom on how to be successful in life. Dr. Hearne is now the president and founder of Made Up Minds and the Euless Loaves and Fishes Foundation. Through these organizations, Dr. Hearne provides training and programs to reach at-risk youth for the purpose of strengthening character, teaching leadership skills, and increasing school attendance, aimed at helping set them up for success in life. Dr. Hearne's passion is to mentor and build leadership skills, particularly in those who have a direct influence over the lives of youth. So welcome, Nate. You've been a teacher, coach, school principal, minister, author, speaker, and a huge influence on countless lives. The list of your accomplishments just seems to go on and on. I had the incredible pleasure of reading your book, Friday Night Lights: Untold Stories from Behind the Lights, and there were countless golden nuggets of wisdom that you shared through your story. So I was hoping, after this lengthy introduction, because there's so much good stuff to share about you, if you could tell me a little bit more about your story and share it with the listeners so they can learn from you.
Thank you so much. And once again, Deidre, I'm so honored to be a part of your podcast.
It's my honor, and thank you.
Yeah. Well, it starts with people helping me who saw the worth in me, saw that I had gifts, and actualized those gifts. Helped me to see that I had the wherewithal to make things happen in my life. If it were not for those two men, I wouldn't be here today. You wouldn't be interviewing me. That's how powerful the relationship was in my life during those days. I was a kid who came out of a situation of poverty. Mm-hmm. Elementary school, I had clothes with holes in them, holes in my shoes to where I had to cut out cardboard to put in the soles of my shoes to keep water out. And when it rained, the heat out in the summer, the cold out in the winter. My mom she cleaned houses for a living. She worked as a domestic. And if you've ever saw the movie The Help, that's what my mom did until the day that she died. My father worked as an attendant at a full service humble station on Main Street in that small community that I grew up in. And he did that job the majority of his life. I'm from a family of 8 siblings. I'm the middle child. It would have been 9.
Wow.
My youngest brother, he died 2 weeks after birth. We lived in a 3-room, not bedroom house, a 3-room house that sit on cinder blocks. There was no hot water, no indoor bath facility. Whenever my mom readied us to take a bath, we would heat the water up on the stove and pour it into a number 5-foot tub. And Deidre, if you've ever saw a number 5-foot tub, it's not very big at all. And if you weren't the first one to get in, by the time it got to the last one, it was cold. So those things were a part of my life. And in elementary school, I really, really hated school. Now, I have 5 degrees, but if my mom was alive, and you asked her, the first thing out of her mouth would say, he hated school. I had to literally spank him every day to make him go to school. And it's the truth. I didn't like walking around with holes in my clothes, holes in my shoes. And we couldn't afford a lot of food. The food that we got came from government programs or uh, church organizations. The Baptist Church would help us on special occasions like Thanksgiving and Christmas and those kind of holidays. So we ate bologna, dry meat and bread bologna sandwiches almost every day. And she would give us 2 cents for a carton of milk. And I carried that dry meat and bread bologna sandwich in a brown paper sack from Piggly Wiggly food store. And we didn't have money to buy new sacks every day. So that sack was greasy. And I had to eat that bologna sandwich, fold that sack up, and put it in my back pocket and take it home. So I hated that. I hated walking around like that. My report card was filled with C's, D's, and F's, more D's and F's than anything, all through elementary school. And when I left elementary school, I told my mom, 6th grade, I remember it vividly. I'm never, ever, ever going back to school. I hate it. And that was the first part of the summer. But then, and the summer ended, I found myself lined up with my brothers and sisters headed off to junior high school like I had never said a word to my mom. Because she was the Muhammad Ali of that house. And she had never lost a bout. And if I wasn't going to school, I knew it was going to be a fight. It was going to be a Thriller in Manila, or the Rumble in the Jungle. And she was an advocate for education, for getting her children educated. So I lined up, headed to junior high school, from elementary school, hating every minute of junior high school because nothing had changed. Still had the holes in my shoes, holes in my clothes, carrying that bologna sandwich. And the moment I walked in Mr. Haig's 5th period science class, my world changed forever. He was sitting at his desk. I walked into the class. I went to the door of the classroom looking for my favorite seat in the corner in the back in the dark. And that was my comfort zone. I got to class early so I could sit in the back of the room. And when I found that seat, Mr. Haig was at his desk. He had his head down. Mr. Haig, 5'10", medium build, dark brown hair like your hair. When he turned to me, he looked at me, he had those deep blue eyes. And he says to me when I stepped through the door, "Oh, you must be Nathan. I've heard a lot of wonderful things about you." Aww. Does that. I turned to look behind me because I thought there had to be another Nathan back there because I stayed in trouble in elementary school. I was always in the principal's office. I hated school, and no one in the principal's office had ever told me I was wonderful. Yes. And he gets up, he comes over, he shakes my hand, he puts his arm around me, and he walks me into the classroom. As he walks me into the classroom, he's talking to me. And he stops and he says, "Nathan, we have arranged seating in this classroom, and this is your desk." And he pointed to a desk that was on the front row, directly in front of his desk.
Wow. And
fear just rained down all over my body. It was the most frightening thing that had ever happened to me. I liked sitting in the back in the dark. That was my comfort zone. This was a huge problem for me. I was covered in fear, but he was a master teacher. He was a master character developer. He was a master motivator. He could take a classroom of 30 students and make each one of us feel like we had a private tutor. And he made me feel special. Have you ever been in a teacher's room where you think that there's teaching just to you?
Yes.
That's how he made me feel.
Nice.
Yes. And when I left his class, I felt special about myself. The last class of the day for me was 7th grade football. And I'm standing outside waiting for the coaches to come out. And out walks this big giant of a man. He's 6'4". He's got lighter brown hair. He's got light blue eyes. He comes down the line shaking hands. And he gets to me. He said, "You're Hearne." He said, "Hearne, I heard you're a gifted athlete and a hard worker." And he said, "You're going to be on my team. We're going to have a lot of fun winning football games." And then he smiled at me. And I went, wow. I went home the first day of junior high school walking on a cloud because 2 teachers in one day had affirmed me. And that had never happened to me in elementary school. It had never happened to me before.
You hit the jackpot that day.
I hit the jackpot that day. And they didn't stop with that day. Every single day, those nuggets of wisdom, those transformational things they told me, those life-changing things that they did for me every day. And it wasn't just for me, but I was so ready for that. I was so ready. I was soaking it up, and it changed my life forever.
Would you say that those men were just uniquely inclined to be generous and giving and believing in the best in people? Do you believe it was something they groomed over a lifetime, or what was their motivation? And how lucky that you had two people in one day, in your first day of high school, to give you that type of affirmation. That's just incredible.
It is. And I believe that those men, that was their character. And like you said, I was lucky, and I'm going to say blessed that day that God decided that these two men would intervene in my life, and they never stopped. I have a picture of 2015 when my book came out. I'm standing with Coach Wallace. My high school that I graduated from invited me back for a book signing, and they put me in the foyer. And Coach Wallace, sometimes I cry.
Aww.
He showed up that day. He's 77 years old, and he showed up that day. And he's telling me, I knew you would do this. We're so proud of you. What is he doing? That's what he's done all his life. He's always been inspirational and affirming. And he's still doing it at age 77.
Amazing.
That's not a coincidence to me.
So, Nate, why don't more people do that? What are your thoughts around human behavior and people's inclinations towards supporting one another?
I think the reason people don't do that, more of that, is because they don't know who they are. They don't know how gifted they are. They don't know their gifts. They don't know that special thing, that innate ability that God has gifted them with. And we all have a special gift. And that's my thing. I want people to understand their talents and to be able to articulate who they are at their core, so they can't help but realize how gifted and special they really are. And that's the thing that changes the world. Yeah, we have to understand who we are first. And then we can help someone else.
Absolutely. And then when you understand who you are, helping others is just an easy flow of just moving forward and helping others, and the circle expands and expands, which is the beauty of it all.
Yes, the beauty of it all. The beauty of it all.
So tell me a little bit more, because you went from high school, middle school, where you were just C's, D's, F's, as you say, and then you went into high school, and according to your book, you really started to excel as a student and as an athlete thanks to the support of those two phenomenal men. And it led you to going into college. You worked very hard at qualifying for a scholarship, and you ended up ultimately becoming a teacher at school. What was it, Ector School District? Am I right in saying that?
Ector County.
So you ended up being a model citizen yourself through your own actions, behaviors, drive, motivation, which ultimately led you to becoming not only a teacher but a coach during the time of Friday Night Lights and when that book was written. Tell me a little bit more about your journey from being a student to being an influencer in people's lives, and how you've impacted others through the process.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I'm going to have to take you back a little bit, and the reason why in the 60s, I decided as a young black kid that I wanted to be a science teacher and a football coach. Now, that was not the norm back in those days. That was like You know, now we just look at, oh, that's no big deal. But then it was like out there. It was out there. And the reason why is because the things that Mr. Hake and Coach Wallace did for me. I just want to share one thing about what Mr. Hake did for me. When I went back the next day to school, Coach Wallace did put me on his team. And I eventually worked myself into being his starting running back and starting cornerback. And I played a game the 6th week of the season for him at 12 years old that I'll never forget. I'm 63 years old today, and I'll never forget. I remember vividly. I scored 4 touchdowns. I rushed for 300 yards, intercepted a pass on defense. We won big. And I'm standing out on the field with in my uniform, and he comes up to me, and he hugs me.
Oh.
And he says, Hearne, he's looking down at me, and he says, Hearne, that was just outstanding. And he had this favorite phrase that he used to use with me all the time. And on that day, he said to me, but I knew you would do this. You're hard worker, you get it. I knew you would do this. And then he steps back, and his wife is a teacher there too. And she comes up, and they're always together, and she comes up and she hugs me. And she tells me that I'm wonderful. And she's like you, she's beautiful. And you know, 7th graders with all those hormones raging. It took 3 weeks to wipe that silly grin off my face. That was on a Saturday. On Monday, I'm in Mr. Hake's 5th period class. He walks by, this is the 6 weeks. He walks by and he puts my report card face down on my desk. And he continues around the room. He comes back to my desk and he says, Nathan, stand up. And he says, boys and girls, I need your attention. What had happened when he walked by and put my report card, I turned it over, and I had an A in science.
Wow.
First A that I could remember getting in public school.
Wow. In science, no less.
In science. And he comes back and he says, Nathan, stand up. And he says, boys and girls, I need your attention. He says, on Saturday, Nathan did da-da-da-da-da. He told him all about what I'd done in that game. And then when he finishes, he says, Nathan is not only an outstanding athlete, but he's an A student in this class. And for his outstanding efforts, I'm going to make him my lab assistant. And he says, Nathan, don't move. And he goes to the back of the room, and he goes into the lab area, and he goes into a closet, and he pulls out this bundle. Now, all this happening is kind of like in slow motion for me because I'm standing in front of my classmates, and I don't have a clue with this deer in the headlight look in my eyes because I don't have a clue what a lab assistant is. He comes back with this folded bundle. He steps to the left of me and behind me, and he unfolds it, and it turns out to be a brand spanking new white lab coat, like the one he wears in class. He puts that lab coat on me in front of my peers, and he's written my name on the pocket. I'm standing, you have to picture this thing. I'm standing in front of my classmates, and nothing has changed. I still got the holes in my shoes. I still have the holes in my pants. I have this greasy brown bologna sandwich piggly wiggly paper sack in my pocket. But I'm standing there in this white lab coat in front of my peers. My life changed forever in that moment. I would never be that kid again who walked into a classroom looking for a seat in the corner in the back in the dark. It changed my life. They saved my life.
Yep.
I went from making D's and F's in elementary school to making A's and B's, not only in Mr. Hake's class, but in all my classes. You know why? I didn't want to let him down. I went from being this kid who wanted to drop out of school, and I had lots of examples in my neighborhood of kids that dropped out. But because of what Coach Wallace had done for me in those days, he would tell me, I'd sit in my locker and I'd be changing to my practice uniform, and he'd walk by and he said, Hearne, those holes in your clothes, those holes in your shoes are not an indication of the man, of the person you're going to become. Those kind of nuggets they gave me. And I went from being this kid who wanted to drop out of school to now having a dream, a goal that became my mission in life to become a science teacher and a football coach.
And they said, I knew you would do it.
They said,
I knew
they
you
said,
would do it.
and I went, I graduated, I walked on, I got a scholarship, full scholarship to college, got out, went back to West Texas, coached football, and taught science for 30 years in the public school system.
Amazing.
10 of those years were spent at Permian High School. And what I wanted to do more than anything else, every student that walked through my biology class, those doors, I wanted to give them that white lab coat experience that Mr. Hake had given me.
Yeah.
Every football player that I coached for 27 years, I wanted to come out on that field and hug them and look them in the eye and say, hey, I knew you would do it. I knew you would do this. That's what they did for me. And that's why, like you say, your words, spread the love.
Spread the love. Yeah.
Inspire others. Share what you have with others.
And it's easy, right? Once you get that ball rolling, it's easy to do.
Isn't it? That's why I wanted to be a science teacher and a coach. Because of those two men and what they did for me. They saved my life.
That's amazing. So the story that people know of you, or that's certainly more public, is the one as you as a coach of the Permian High School team, assistant coach, and there was some turmoil and drama revolving around that whole process, and somehow you ended up in the middle of it. And I think really it was partially was other people's envy, but also misreading your intentions, perhaps. You loved those players and you wanted the best for them and you wanted to set an example for their lives. Give me a little insight in some of the trials and tribulations that you experienced during those years, because I imagine it probably put a lot of stress on you and may have tested your faith and your strength around your dedication to helping kids, disadvantaged kids in particular.
That's awesome. And it was stressful and it took a lot. But one of the things that when I didn't like it, well, because I had played ball in college, when I left left college going back to West Texas, this is what I thought I was going to do. This is what I had in my mind. I was going to coach high school football for like 5 or 6 years. Then I was going to get a college job, maybe at the University of Texas or TCU or Baylor or somewhere like that. And I was going to coach college ball for about 5. And then I was going to go coach the Dallas Cowboys. That's what I had in my head. Mm-hmm. And when I got to West Texas, there were no jobs. The all boom was on. Mm-hmm. And I applied, nothing happened, so I went to graduate school, I cleaned offices, and I cleaned pools. I had 3 jobs that I worked for six months. And then I finally got a call from, at that time it was 3 high schools in Odessa. Ector was the minority school in Permian and in Odessa High. Well, the head coach from the minority school, Ector High School, called me. And he said, I heard you're still looking for a job. And I said, yes, sir. He said, well, I think I have something for you. And I said, I'm open. And I thought I was going to the high school to coach running backs and defensive backs. And he said, an elementary PE teacher. And I thought, no way.
Wait a second. I'm supposed to be coaching the Cowboys. What's going on?
Those 3 jobs, it made me wake up. And so I took it. I took the job. And I thought I had died. And it turned out to be, I worked that job for 4 years, and it turned out to be the most rewarding thing I'd ever done in my life. When I finally got a call to start coaching football in the junior high, there were 600 elementary students, and I bet I got 599 cupcakes, cards, hugs, tears the day that I was leaving. And the way God works is that he had a purpose for me starting there, because those kids that I coached, that I worked with at that elementary school, would be the children of some of those that I had worked with, or they were related to some of those junior high kids I had spent their time with. When I got to Permian, everybody knew me in that Southside community. And those athletes, they were coming because we were winning and we had great teams. And people misconstrued that as me recruiting those kids. Mm-hmm. But I knew their moms and their dads. I knew their uncles and their grandparents, and they knew me. And they said, this is a good man. And this is
your heart.
Right. And that was the plan. They knew me. And people who didn't know that thought, well, he's recruiting.
Yeah.
And it's really bad in the state if you got a football program that's winning state championships and national championships, and they think that you're cheating. I mean, they took me through the ringer. I got calls, threatening calls. People followed me. The state put me on trial. My principal, who was a great man, passed. He was my mentor from the moment I stepped into the public school system until the day he died. He called me to his office. He was the vice principal at Permian, and he said, do you know why these people are after you? And I said, no, sir. He said, they feel that you are the one that controls the team. You're the ones that the players listen to. You're the one they react to. And so they're bound to determine to get you. And he says, you're running around thinking that people think like you think. Say they don't. You think everybody is wholesome and good and they don't have any problems with they don't think that there's anything going on, that they're going to play the game right and fair, and that's how you think that you're doing it. They don't think like that. They think they're going to get you, and they're going to stop you, and they're going to do it any way, any means necessary to get you out of Permian High School.
How painful an experience that must have been. How did you get through that trying period?
I had my mom. She was the Bible toting, key to the church every day at that church, and that's how she brought us up at the church every day. And you know, prayer is powerful to me. I think I know it works. And I had a praying mother who I felt that her prayers were the key to everything in my life. And I know she was praying for me. And I would call her and talk to her. And she would always start with a Bible verse. And she would tell me this. One of her favorite things was she said, son, trouble don't last always. Yeah. And put your faith in God. And he will see you through any kind of problem. Mm-hmm. And I knew that as long as I had her, and I had her praying for me, and there were a lot of good, like the Mr. Rutledge, who was the vice principal, and a lot of other people who knew my heart, and they knew that I loved those young men on that team. Just like you said, I loved them, and I cared enough about them that I wasn't going to do anything to hurt them or to hurt the team, and the coaches knew that. So those things I had going for me. But the basic thing, the most important thing, was that I had to keep the faith to know that I would see an end to this, that good would prevail, because I didn't do anything wrong.
There's a couple of things that are really striking me as you speak, and one of them is that love is the most powerful force, unseen, and often misunderstood if people don't have that love in their own hearts, right? But then the second part is that prayer is a form of...
Joel.
Oops.
Call.
Nate, God's calling you. Pick up the phone.
I'm trying to hang it up. Where my wife is. I'm so sorry.
No, it's all good. This is homegrown podcasting.
Yes. Spirit.
So I think the part two of this is that prayer is a very intensive and directed form of loving somebody, right?
Yes.
And then if you bring it back, I know that your faith and your religion is very important to you. If you look at it in term biblically, Jesus died on the cross for us, right? So through his own, he also suffered doubt on the cross,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Yes.
You know, why have you abandoned me? He said on the cross. Like, so in a way, you had your own crucifixion and resurrection from that moment.
That's good. That's good.
Which is incredible, because if Jesus hadn't died on the cross for us, perhaps he wouldn't be as powerful a figure in our lives, because he died for our sins. And in many ways, you had your own crucifixion, where coming through the fire of that trial, you set an example for others and stand to lead others through their own trials. Would you agree with that statement?
Wholeheartedly. You've articulated that better than I ever thought. How it should be, you know, how it was,
Yeah.
but that was great. That's awesome.
Thank you.
It's awesome. Yeah. It was a trial, and it was after, and in the imagery you use, a resurrection, is just so prophetic, because after going through all of that, and they put us on trial. It was 4 of us, and me. They went after individually and said that the recruiting thing was what I was doing, and they told us that if we ever violated another rule in the state of Texas, that we could not coach football again for the rest of our lives.
Wow.
For the rest of our lives.
Incredible.
And I thought, this was not a court. It was not a court of law. They had no grounds to say we were guilty, because there was no evidence. It wasn't presented that way. They said that. And our names all over this. It was all over the nation.
Yeah, it was all over the nation. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so I'm something that I love doing could be taken away from me that easily by people who were unjust and self-centered, because they were thinking about themselves and they wanted to bring this program down, and they didn't care who they hurt doing it. We went through that, and then the next year, we go 16-0 and win another state championship.
Oh, showing the haters how it's done, Nate.
Resurrection.
Resurrection. Haters gonna hate.
You're gonna hate. So what do you do with that? Take that.
Exactly. Yeah. Good, really, really good stuff. And then you went on to become a principal at the high school and winning Principal of the Year. What was that? Like a year or two later, you went from having going through a very challenging period to making lemonade. Lemons to lemonade. It's just such an inspiring story.
Oh, thank you for that. Yeah. It is. And one of the things that after I went through that, then I went into administration. I was asked it during those times of some difficult times. One of the things I remember more vividly is after I was named Principal of the Year. Outstanding Principal of the Year, covered 23 counties, and they sent me to Austin, Texas to receive the award from the governor of Texas.
The same place you were crucified.
Same place I was crucified.
By the way, yes.
You're awesome. You keep bringing, that's beautiful. Imagery, I never thought of it. I'm going to have to write a book on those things you're giving me.
I'll help you. I'll just keep reminding you how awesome you are.
That's awesome. I come back, and there's a small article in the newspaper about me receiving the award. And 2 days later, after I returned, my secretary, Mrs. Alice Mosley, she walks into my office and she says, "Mr. Hearne, you have a visitor." And I thought it was a student, and I was signing papers, and I just said, Mrs. Mosley, please just send them in. And I didn't look up. And a few short seconds later, I feel this presence over me. And I look up, and it's Coach Wallace.
Wow.
But he's not Coach Wallace anymore. He's the superintendent of that school district that I graduated from.
Wow.
And he's standing there. And I'm overcome, and I still get teary. And I'm overcome with emotions, and I jump up to shake his hand. And he does this. He walks around my desk, and he hugs me. And he says, Hearne. He still always called me Hearne. He said, Hearne, we read about you in the newspaper. And I just wanted to come by and tell you how proud we are of you. Aww. What an outstanding job you're doing. And then he said those words. He said, I knew we'd do this.
You do it. Yes. The amazing thing about this, Nate, is that he had the same impact on you as a freshman in high school as he did that same impact as you were an accomplished adult.
Yes.
So that thread of love and encouragement can continue through a lifetime in ways that we can support each other. We can never even begin to fathom the impact. And, you know, I'm sure your science teacher and your coach, I mean, they believed in you, but did they understand the impact that the ripple effect of their believing in you would have had on a much broader community? And that's the part that really resonates with me.
Yes. And those, I've talked to other people. You know, when you start telling your story, people get in touch with you, and they'll say things like, both of those, they say you describe them in the book exactly as they are, and they're in their 80s now, and they still do that. They still impact and inspire people's lives like that. And you know, it's just like you talk to me, you give the imagery of Jesus, and it's just like him discipling one person and then says, go out and share the love. And that's what they did. They impacted my life to now I have a platform where I've shared their story, Dee. I've shared it all over from one end of the United States to the other. And people will call me. And some of them will have tears in their eyes. And they're saying, hey, I read this. This is amazing. These men, this life you're leading, it's just an amazing thing. And that's the impact that they have in the community and in a person's life.
So what you're doing now is you're going out and spreading the love, but you're sharing your story through speaking, and you also work with an organization called Made Up Minds, and you list loaves and fishes. Maybe you could tell us a little bit more about the work you're doing through those organizations.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yes, because I was an at-risk kid, as you well know, we've shared here. My passion is to see other lives changed. And what I found out in working with students that are at risk, they're very, very bright. But we know school systems are set up on the logistical mathematical format. If you have that logistical mathematical kind of background, you're going to succeed in public school. You're going to breeze through.
Right, yes.
If you're a kinesthetic learner, if someone tells you, like, okay, we have this epic Beowulf or whatever, the Odyssey, you need to sit for 45 minutes and read that. A kid who's kinesthetic, that's a death sentence to him. He's not going to do it. And then what do they do with them? They label them as troublemakers. Yeah. But they're not. They just can't sit in a room for 45 minutes and read a book. But they're very bright. They're fluid learners. They like talking to people. They have to move and share with people. They learn by watching. And they're very bright. And if you actualize and help those students understand their gifts, they flourish. And one thing they do is that they never forget you. Because of my work in that environment, I run into students all over, and they'll come up to me and they'll hug me, and they'll say, "You helped me." And I'll have people and teachers with me who worked in the program, and they go, "Why do they do that?" It's because I wasn't judgmental. It's because I love them unconditionally. Because I could see that in them. Because that's the same thing that I had in me. I wanted to be understood. And two men understood me. And it changed my life. And that's what I want to do. And that's why I work in that field. That's why I'm so passionate about it. Because if kids understand why you do what you do, it will change their life. They don't. It's not so much about your what or your how, but if they know that you love them unconditionally and you want them to succeed.
I want to pull a couple of things from your book that touch on this very issue. And one of them, you say, scientific studies show that character strengths that matter most when it comes to success for young people are not innate. They don't just pop up like a rabbit out of a magician's hat. These character traits are rooted in brain chemistry. The environment in which these young people live molds them. So, to give you as an example, you had a very challenging and trying upbringing by virtue of living in poverty. And education wasn't innate to you. But you had some people who really believed in you and invested themselves in you so that you can learn your own gifts and really embody that and share that. And so I feel that that's what you're doing through your programs is teaching people what their strengths are. And the other quote I'd like to take from the book is something you actually shared from a Malcolm Gladwell book from David and Goliath.
Yeah.
And you say, for some reason, this is the quote you took, for some reason, this is a very difficult lesson for us to learn. We have, I think, a very rigid and limited definition of what an advantage is. We think of things as helpful that actually aren't, and think of other things as unhelpful that in reality leave us stronger and wiser.
Yes.
So, and your life is a testament to that. The challenges have made you who you are, and from what I've learned about you is that you're teaching the people, the at-risk youth, that perhaps the disadvantages in their life are the very advantages that will give them the understanding of who they truly are and what they're capable of doing.
And I know you've experienced that. You wouldn't be where you are today it's just a lesson that some people have trouble learning and some students get it just automatically. And it's like, don't look at your trials as failures. Don't look at your the things that you don't succeed at as permanent in your life, because they're not. Those things are to make you stronger. And some students can grab that and some really don't. And that's in their environment. I read a book called The Price of Privilege. And it was about students who were from very wealthy families in New York in a private school. And the lady that wrote the book was a psychiatrist who dealt with the aftermath of those students. And one of the things that would happen to them is that their parents would never let them experience failure.
Yes, I suffer from that as a mother. I have a mother of 3 boys, and I hate to see them fail. But I think it's the failures that really allow you to learn for yourself. Like, you can't give people on a platter those lessons, unfortunately or fortunately. It's God's way.
Yes.
You have to go through it yourself in order to really understand.
You do. You have to experience that. And you have to know that it's not permanent in your life. And you have to have someone there who says, son, it's okay. You did the best that you can do. Now use that, because you've learned now, so you won't make that mistake again. You've
learned now, so the trial was a lesson or an opportunity. And really life is just one big school of learning, right? Hardships equal lessons. And the
Hardship.
key is learning from those lessons.
It's awesome. Yeah, I know your 3 boys are going to be exceptional.
I sure hope so.
Well,
Well, I'd also like to share a biblical quote, which kind of, Malcolm Gladwell comes from the secular point of view, but there's this other quote that you provided, which is from James chapter 1, verses 2 through 4. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of any kind, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking in anything.
that just everything that we've just talked about, everything we just said is captured in that verse.
Right.
James captured it well. And it's amazing how people we don't apply that to our lives.
Oh, the perseverance piece, I think, and he says it twice in that verse.
Yes.
Perseverance. Or as Winston Churchill said, never, 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 never give up. Like, so many times when things seem so hard and out of reach, that's exactly the point where we need to just bear down and keep going.
It's true. And people don't care about your failures. They don't look at your failures. What they look at is how you get up.
Right.
That's what they remember. They remember how you get up, and they celebrate that.
Yeah.
And that's why, I want people to understand God forgives. You have to read your Bible to understand all those failures that those men who are prominent in the Bible, what they did, the women, the things that we did as human beings.
Incredible.
And we look at them as huge, but they didn't start out that way.
Well, we see them as being apart, right? Set apart. Somehow they achieve this greatness or this stature of heroism because of some blessed, God-given something. But the fact of the matter is we all are sons and daughters of God, right? So we're all blessed with that innate ability to overcome. Yes. If we choose it. But I think your point is, through the work that you're doing, is that with support, with mentorship, with leaders who care and can support one another through these trials, that makes all the difference and creates a step change for us to be able to overcome and persevere.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
I agree wholeheartedly. I had a story I'd like to share a real quick story about a mother. I was the principal for the discipline school for 5 years, longer than anybody had ever tried to run that school. And I had a mother, she had a 14-year-old daughter who she never stayed more than 30 days in the public school, regular school setting. She was always shipped to the discipline school because she got in trouble. She was one of those kinesthetic, very bright, but she didn't like, her pet peeve was teachers who were not honest. She just, he said this and she did, and that the minute that you did something that she thought was unjust or didn't have honesty, she would just go off. And so they would send her to my school. And her mother was a single mom, no education, didn't graduate from high school. She had a job at the airport. And her daughter would get in trouble. She would use sailor's language with the teacher. She had an art for cursing people out. She could do it. It just flowed. And then they would send her to my office and they wanted her out, gone. So I would do things with her to keep her there because I knew she wanted a vacation. She just wanted to be out. So I would talk to her. But one day there was so much going on, I didn't have time. So I called her mother and I said, Mrs. So-and-so, you're going to have to come get her today because I can't keep her here. The isolation room is full. I have no other place to put her. And she said, well, Mr. Hearne, I only have enough gas to get to my job. If I come get her, I can't go to work. And I said, can you make it to the Chevron station on da-da-da street? And she said, I believe I can make it there. Why? And I said, well, if you just meet me there, you'll just meet me there and you'll see. So she said, okay, hung with the phone. And she drove up and I was standing there and I just told her to pull up to the pump. And she pulled up to the pump and I filled her car with gas. And then I gave her $20 to whatever else she needed to do. She sat on the curb and she cried for 30 minutes. And she said, you don't understand. My daughter has been in and out of these type of schools from day one. Mm. And not a single principal has ever done what you've done. No. And she said, I don't know what to say. And I said, ma'am, my whole purpose and my whole being is to help you and your daughter be successful. If I can't help you be successful, I can't help your daughter be successful. And that's all I want to do is help you both achieve.
I think people forget that we're human beings and we have feelings, right? And underneath those crusty, hard exteriors, there's people, and we're all that, right? We all have hearts, we all have souls, and sometimes those people may be a little harder to love, but the love is what softens it and makes all the difference in the world, right? Back to spread the love.
Back to spread the love.
Yeah.
Back to spread the love. Our daughter she said this was the first time that our daughter had ever come home and said anything about anybody in the school system that was good. And she said, my daughter talks about you all the time.
That's awesome. Well, we've only got a few more minutes left, and I wanted to make sure that I ask a few more questions that I ask many of my guests. And the first one is, do you have a favorite ambition quote that means something to you personally that you'd like to share with the listeners?
I do. I'm going to use this one. And I don't want to mess up. You correct me, Dee, if it's I think it's Oliver Wendell Holmes. And he said, what lies before you, and this is a little bit of Nate Hearne added in this too, what lies before you and what lies behind you is nothing compared to the Jesus that lies within you.
Yes. Awesome. Great.
I love that quote.
Love it. That's a great quote. Yeah. And your life is shining testament to that.
Yeah. I love it. I do.
So you've already talked about the mentors that have been influential to you. Is there anybody who you would recommend that come on this show that I could interview that you think would be able to spread big ideas and share their love with my audience?
I have. Do you want more? One or two, or how many?
I'll take as many as you're willing to give to me. But give me one for purposes of this show, and we can follow up afterwards with the others.
Ryan Young.
And who is he?
Ryan Young. He was employed. I don't know if he might have resigned the position, but he worked for the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, and he's a former. A retired NFL player who played at Kansas State under Coach Bill Snyder, two-time All-American, draft choice from the Jets, played Jets, Texans, and he ended his career with the Dallas Cowboys.
Wow.
And he worked FCA for no salary. He just has a heart for people.
Incredible.
And just a man of God who he wants to work with young men and young women in the public school systems. He has the same heart that I have, and he would love you. You would love it.
I'm sure I would.
Big giant of a man, 6'6", 300 pounds, but just got a heart of gold. Just a big teddy bear's heart. He loves working with young men.
Excellent. Well, I'd love an introduction if you'd be open to that.
I'll do that.
And last but not least, are there any products or resources that you'd like to share with the listeners to help them achieve the breakthroughs that we've talked about today?
Truly. There's a couple. One of the things that my wife and I do, we're facilitators for Core Clarity. And Core Clarity is a program where we take the strengths from the assessment of the Strength Finder, those 5 top talents, and we help people see that core value in them, that innate thing that God has put in them, that helps them to become, if they realize it's successful, those talents that they have. And we talked about this earlier in the show about
Yes.
You have to know who you are in order to be a great leader, in order to help other people. So that's what we do. And it's an amazing program. When we finish with that program, there are people in tears because it's about what God is doing in them.
Nice.
How they put it out. And the second thing is I have a book and I have a study guide that I would love people to read.
So tell me about the book and the study guide, and where can we get more information about those resources?
The book and the study guide is what you referenced at the beginning of the show, Friday Nights, The Untold Stories from Behind the Lights, and it's a study guide that accompanies the book. And you can get those on my website with drnatehearne.com. And you can, PayPal, or you can also, I'm willing to share love with Amazon and Barnes and Nobles, and you can get them from those entities too. If you order it from me, I will personally autograph it and send it to you.
Wow. That's amazing. What a great opportunity. So let me understand correctly. It's Dr. Nate Hearne, HEARNE.com. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And Nate, you had mentioned you'd be willing to give away 5 free books to the first listeners who contact you directly. How would they go about contacting you?
Through the drnatehearne.com.
Awesome.
And just send type in a text or an email to me, or they can also go to nate.hearne@madeupminds.org. If you type an email to me, then I will get that and you put your address in there, and I will send it to you.
So that's nate.hearne@madeupminds.com.
.org.
Oh, sorry, .org. Okay, well, thank you so much for your time today. You can find all the links that Nate just mentioned and a mention of the resources by going to my website at ambitionprojectshow.com. And again, to learn more about Nate, go to drnatehearne.org. And if you love this episode, please head over to iTunes and subscribe to the Ambition Project Show. You can also find me on the website at www.theambitionprojectshow.com. And if you've loved this episode, we'd love to get your feedback. Share the love, spread the love, and share this episode with anyone that you think can benefit from this good news that Nate shared with us today. So again, Nate, thank you so much. And to all the listeners, stay ambitious and let's get out there and make the world a better place.
Make the world a better place.
Make the world a better place. Thanks, Nate.
Thank you so much, Dave. See you soon.
See you.